Welcome to Safety Chats. Host Jason Starke, Director of Safety at Baldwin Safety and Compliance, shares decades of aviation experience and a passion for safety. Let's get started with this week's Safety Chat.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Baldwin Safety Chat podcast where we talk about all things safety management, aviation safety, or just how we can do our jobs a little bit better. And today's episode is no exception to that. And we sit down and talk with Tim Aldridge, who is the Director of Safety for a large 91 flight department. Have a lot of things going on, coastal operations. By that, I mean on either coast. We talk about specifically management of change, but then we dive into a couple other topics dealing with safety management. And then we talk about his role as Director of Safety, having been a Director of Maintenance prior to that. I think you'll enjoy this. Tim's a wonderful individual. He's got a lot to say, and I think we can all learn from his conversation. So sit back and enjoy. Very honored to have a wonderful individual, Tim Aldridge here. I guess a really safety aficionado, as I call you.
Leaning into that a little more, and that afforded me the opportunity last summer. Was approached by my leadership if I had interest in that. Now, absolutely. I know we may not focus on it, but one of the other change management initiatives we're also working on is an aircraft change management initiative.
Hey, Tim, why don't you say hi to everybody, and what's kind of your background? What else do you do there?
Hey, I'm Tim Aldridge, as Jason said. I'm with a 91 operator. Kind of a unique part of our operation is we're also a 145 repair station. We are spread out in multiple locations across the country. So as you can imagine, there's always going to be some challenges with different time zones, different aircraft, and different operations that they conduct. Part of our operation is in support of our executive leadership. Part of our operation is in support of our employees. Basically need to get to work every day. So we kind of do a little bit of everything. The majority of my background is maintenance. I've had a cup of coffee in the Marine Corps. I was on C-130s, a flight crew, and maintenance on that. And then retired from the service about, 18 years now, and have been in corporate aviation ever since, predominantly with the bigger aircraft, Gulfstreams and whatnot. With our company, we've got quite a bit of turboprop operational exposure as well. So that's been a learning experience for myself. And we're about 50 strong, and again, spread out over several locations. Kind of already described a bit of our operation. Again, executive transport, kind of typical flight department posture, if you will, corporate flight department, and then again, kind of a scheduled service to move some of our really smart people to and from work every day.
Yeah, so definitely a lot of moving parts. And I know, so understanding your past, you were Director of Maintenance at one point, and then you were moved into the safety position. How long ago was that?
That's been about 9 months now. And I had been taking partially Baldwin as well. I'd been doing a lot of you kind of get to a point in your career where you've been to all the G550 recurrence and training and whatnot, and there's nothing wrong with any of that, and I enjoyed it, and it's important. But in my position, I thought it important to start getting to kind of spread out the exposure to different aspects of the flight department. It led me to attain a CAM certification to kind of learn about what the rest of the department's doing, and then from there, started focusing a lot of my training into the safety regimen, and began with NBAA and Baldwin, Wyvern, USC's Viterbi programs, kind of a renowned one in our industry. So it's something that's important to all of us. Doesn't matter what our position is in the department. I've always had a kind of a yearning to help lead that effort, and as much as I could from a maintenance background, but now I've got the opportunity to have some influence and help lead the effort across the entire department. And I've got a lot to learn. I'm still learning, but I've had some good training along the way. Your course notwithstanding, and several others, and that's helped lay a good foundation, I hope, for me to take our SMS forward and go from there and continue to keep safety in everybody's focus.
Like you said, in 9 months, you've obviously learned a lot, and your organization's going through a change, and fairly large change. And I think that's what drew me to having you on this podcast, is reviewing how you're doing the change is just, I mean, it's like textbook. It's beautiful. I know you don't have to go into a lot of detail, but can you tell us a little bit about this change that you're going through in the organization, and we'll dive into how you're handling it.
Well, for starters, thank you for the kind of the kudos. I don't have a lot of direct experience in playing this big a role in change management. So a lot of that credit, if we're doing it right, it's come from a lot of the training I've gotten from Baldwin. Your safety manager program hit on that. Been to seminars that Baldwin has spoken to on that topic. So a lot of the basis of that has come from some training and Baldwin's template in their safety management systems program. That's really what's guided us. And to get more to your point, we are moving across the field, if you will, from our current location and kind of the FBO we're tethered to doing the exact opposite on the other side of the airfield. There's several FBOs here, and for the ability to maybe grow and maybe some modernization of the facility, our leadership's made the determination that it was time to explore some other options on the field, and so we've begun that process, modifying, going from an older King Air to a newer version of that, and that process is ongoing. And again, our leadership's got obviously a big hand in that, but it was an opportunity again to exercise change management. You know, we actually did one on me when I assumed this position. You know, I'm coming from a maintenance background. Our former safety officer was one of our pilots. So, you know, there's some differences in a knowledge base and maybe how you approach things and needing to learn some things about how the other side kind of does their business. So I thought that was a good opportunity to kind of get some exposure to change management and a methodical way of kind of taking a look at things and ensuring that it's not just me thinking of all the, here's what could go wrong, here's what we need to focus on. It's more of a collaborative effort, whether it's a change of a key person, an aircraft modernization or replacement, or really in particular in this case, with us just changing locations from one part of an airport to another.
You're taking a lot of stuff, a lot of people, and moving it a physical distance, and you are going from an environment where you are a tenant of an FBO to now probably doing a lot of those functions autonomously yourselves. There's a lot of concern there, I would imagine. Just the fact that you may be exposing yourselves to new challenges, new threats, new hazards. So multifaceted, from towing to fueling to where your passengers are picked up, all that. How did you wrangle all that together? How are you dealing with that?
And you hit on a lot of the key concerns that we initially have come up with and are continuing to focus on. You know, here we're responsible for all the ground movements of the aircraft, coordinating de-icing and fueling and all that. And we're kind of turning that over to an FBO and trusting them to do those things on our behalf, do them efficiently, do them safely, do them effectively in a timely manner. And that just doesn't happen by showing up on Monday after kind of ceasing things on a Friday. So it's like with any change, the collaboration, the involvement of some key folks, of some folks with the expertise and the knowledge and the background to make sure you're not missing anything. It shouldn't be one or two people just sitting in a room trying to conjure up everything. That's a great start. And that's what essentially our leadership and myself initially began doing. But we certainly knew there was going to be a time to expand that out and involve kind of the stakeholders, if you will, the folks that have ownership of all the departments in our flight department, whether it's the flight coordination team, the maintenance team, our pilot cadre, our flight attendants. There's been involvement from all those folks. We have also worked with that gaining FBO and brought them into the process and asked for their credentials and certifications. How do you normally do this? What can we expect? Well, here's how we typically, a typical flight, a typical day in the life of goes. Where is that not going to mesh with what you all typically provide your folks? And so my leadership, especially our director of flight operations, has been working nonstop with the leadership of that FBO to kind of run some of those thoughts through and see if we need to kind of implement some change or level expectations, things like that. So we know what to anticipate and they do of us. And then if there's going to be some thorns in that we've got the time and the opportunity and the right people to address those and to kind of mitigate them out. So I think one of the biggest assets we've got, I'm probably repeating myself, is those folks that are kind of the experts, that are the ones you want to bring into it and get their thoughts and their what about this, what about that. That's really where this change management, I think, sells itself, is the collaboration the involvement of others besides just one or two folks.
And looking at the plan you documented out, well, first I want to say, I apologize, I had it backwards. You're moving from autonomous operations to an FBO tenant. I said it the other way, which itself, and then the fact that you said that the FBO you identified as a major stakeholder in this change, because they're going to be doing a lot of stuff for you now, is huge. So what I've heard is that you've gone out to all the people or the heads that are going to be impacted by this change, or who's going to be part of the change, and you said, hey, give me your input. What could go wrong here, or what are that we do now that might need to change. And from that, I'm imagining you've identified areas that need to be addressed. Is that a fair statement?
That's more than fair. We're not looking to start up some new service or operation. We just want to have the continuance of what we're doing, which is, delivering our passengers, our customers, if you will, to their destination safely on time. And now we've got a partner in that, an external partner that we didn't have before. That we want to bring them into that and ensure that they understand our challenges and where we've got blind spots and gaps, and trying to identify some of theirs as well. We talked earlier about ground servicing and aircraft movement and all the support that goes with that. Some things just as simple as, where are we going to put our catering, and how do you ensure that kind of thing is secure and it's not tampered with. And some of the folks we move around, and everybody's important, don't get me wrong, but we've got security is never far from anybody's mind in aviation, corporate aviation especially. We obviously share those concerns as well. So there's a lot of our effort is into the security assurance of not just our folks that are there every day, but of the aircraft and of the things that go aboard that aircraft, the fuel, the food. We've talked about that. Those types of things are potential weak areas where things can be introduced. So we put a lot of focus in security. The folks that we're heading over to, they move airplanes, they fuel them all day long. We don't have some secure aircraft that they've not dealt with before. So the familiarity and them knowing, once they gain a knowledge of our operation, I think things will get fluid fairly quickly. But initially, I think security, storage, and again, security of not just people coming and going, but of the aircraft themselves, of things like catering, things where we might have a bit of a blind spot and there might be a way to introduce something unsavory in that area.
And I love how you're enumerating all the challenges. I think when you and I talked, you had even mentioned, with your clients, the executives, having the rental cars or the transportation show up at the right spot. That when you flip that switch, because that itself, while maybe not necessarily a safety hazard, could really be a quality of service hazard. And that could be leaving you with egg on your face, for lack of a better term. So all that was brought as input. One question for you, Tim. When you're going through this process, like I said, you've really been meticulous in giving all the feedback and identifying problems and mitigating the problems. Have you received any pushback from any of the stakeholders in this process, as far as seeing it more as just a check the box exercise rather than being beneficial? Have you heard any comments like that?
That's a great question. So far, we have not. And I think part of that comes from the fact that we've done something similar in the past, albeit it wasn't under the guises of a kind of an SMS in Baldwin in particular, but we've made a similar move, what we're doing now, so about 7 or 8 years ago, where we moved part of our operation from one location in Southern California down to another. And a lot of the same challenges then are present now. So I think it's helped folks maybe buy into the fact that this is how this worked last time, and here's some of the hiccups we had last time, and some of that's getting built into this, some of the thought process, because a lot of us are still here from then and went through that. So I think that's kind of prevented folks from being pessimistic about it or glass half empty type of approach. They're taking this part of it seriously, and I think for us, this is going to help ensure a more seamless move, and when there are issues, that we'll have something built in to identify that and to go back and measure the level of success or, hiccups, if you will, into this process. So I think we've got solid thinking and buy-in and inputs from everybody that's been involved up to this point.
You brought up a great point. So we talked about you found your challenges and then implementing the plan and then listening to see if there's any hiccups. In the change management, have you yet identified areas where you should listen, or where you think you might have hiccups, or is it just a general gonna listen everywhere?
Well, we're certainly listening everywhere, to use your thinking on that. I think some of the apprehension is we just haven't tried to operate out of there yet. And we're just kind of banking on this process is going to weed out all the potential pitfalls and that we're just going to pick up on Monday and everything's going to be great because we ran this plan. We know that there's going to be unanticipated surprises and hiccups and somebody's not going to know about something or wasn't told. We've got several areas built into that template to where we can go back and measure success or a lack of and identify critical areas that can get additional focus and that we commit additional resources to try and get that mitigated and ironed out. It's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different areas. Fortunately, I believe for us, it's logistically, it's 1,000 yards. You've got to do everything you'd be doing in essence if you were moving, 500 miles. So I think we're approaching it from that view that it's not just a walk across the street. It's a lot more than that. And again, I think this process and us getting in front of it and my leadership involving his leadership is going to help give us the best outcome that we can have.
Well, I guess the question is, do you now have a plan in place about this move as far as when it's going to execute and whatnot? And probably know the answer to this, but how important was this exercise of all the work you did, stakeholder involvement, finding issues, mitigating those issues? How important was that to this plan and influencing this plan to move forward?
I think for me, again, kind of being relatively new to this safety role and the fact that Baldwin's got a tenet of it that is dedicated to change management, having the opportunity to exercise that, the familiarity that we all have with Baldwin made a lot of sense to us. It made it intuitive. The fact that somebody has kind of vetted that out and there's 9 or 10 kind of subtopics to be mindful of for this type of a change management process has made me feel like, and hopefully given my leadership the confidence that we're not overlooking anything, that we've got all the crucial areas identified. Some have got a lot more content and potential for risk than others, but I don't feel like at this time that we've got any areas that we're not identified, that we're not working on, that we're not focused on. That plan covers, to me, the gamut of what we can expect moving, and a way to measure that success, I think, is very important. Having this laid out, it's because we didn't have this 7 years ago, and I think for some of us that have been here that will have been exposed to both, I think it's going to become really clear just how much more efficient and comprehensive an operation is going to go by having this kind of this template, this roadmap, if you will, to follow. So that's been a big help for me. If I were kind of just the maintenance director and focused on that area, I'd be in my own little silo, and you don't know how that information is going to make it up to your leadership and the other departments. We all work together day in and day out, but I'm going to be focused in my little area and making sure all goes well there. And maybe the rest of the department's not seeing the maintenance portion of this, and where we're going to keep parts and how's this going to happen with aircraft movements and whatnot. Everybody's got a role in this. Everybody's got a role in the operation of aircraft. We all do that in our departments, but to have a collaborative area to collect information and thoughts and inputs, it's going to make this, again, as smooth as an operation as this can be. I feel confident in that, and that's what I think helps my leadership and myself feel confident in how we're going about this, that we've kind of got something where we're identifying potential issues and ways to kind of best methods to work through those.
That's awesome. I've read that a majority of change fails. Not necessarily that the change doesn't happen, it just happens in happenstance, or it happens very recklessly. A lot of those failures are due to lack of communication. Can you speak to me just a little bit about what the communication looks like during this change, as far as frequency, direction, like up to leadership, from leadership back down, or horizontal? What does that look like through your change management plan?
That's obviously a crucial point is the communication of this. All the best plans in the world aren't going to matter much if they're just sitting in somebody's office. The first thing we did was, again, we worked through the Baldwin change management template and identified kind of the topics in those areas. My leadership and myself did. He and I meet weekly. Sometimes we talk for an hour, sometimes it's 10 minutes and there's not much to report, or we're tweaking something or modifying this, or Susie in flight coordination came up and approached us about this. So it's a chance for he and I to stay on the same page. I've also taken those key points. I've pulled a lot of that data and just put it into a small PowerPoint presentation that we can share out with the leadership and with the team, the entire team. So that's kind of teed up and ready to go. My leadership and all the department heads, we talk every 2 weeks on this. So it's my boss and I weekly, he and the rest of the staff every 2 weeks. So we're kind of just jumping over each other and keeping the continuity alive. And when the time comes to kind of speak to the entire team on it, we'll have a reasonably, hopefully decent PowerPoint presentation along with, the ability to go into Baldwin and make entries there and kind of review the progress. So that's right now until we can kind of confirm that everything's been completed. That's kind of where we're at with the communications. And it comes from the top, comes from my boss down through myself and to his managers. And a lot of a backflow back up with ideas and thoughts and what about this and what do we think of that kind of thing. So it's been good. Some folks are like myself, have gotten really familiar with Baldwin, and some folks it can take a minute to get logged in and get in there just from maybe a lack of repetitiveness. So I certainly encourage phone call and email inputs and whatnot. So we take all of that and we kind of pull it into Baldwin and update that template, and then again, kind of update the slides, if you will, to make sure that's a reflection of what we've got captured in Baldwin.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to reiterate that point. If anybody ever has a question on using any aspect of Baldwin, just call us a separate appointment. We are so happy to work with you. So do you guys have a date? Are you feeling ready, or there's still preparation?
Well, I think there's going to be preparation right up until the boss says go. I think we're about maybe 6-7 months out. I personally think he and his leadership identified this need, a good while ago. But when it started growing legs, just as somebody that kind of manages the SMS and is involved in all the time, I was pulled into it to start brainstorming and putting some thoughts together. And coming from maintenance and knowing that a lot of what is going to change is going to have to do with ground handling and servicing and whatnot, and part storage and tool storage and office spaces for the technicians and all. It was helpful that maybe I had some of that background and fairly recently that could help him kind of put together some major topics to focus on. And then as that has worked on, he's brought the rest of his team into it and gotten people's perspective from the piloting cadre, the flight attendants, the rest of the maintenance management, flight coordination team, folks like that. So we're thinking somewhere in the fall. That could move, obviously, just like anything else. But I think what's been good is my boss's foresight to kind of get his team involved in this as early on as practical and to act upon what he could act upon while things were and still are kind of being sorted out on the administrative front. So I feel like where we're at right now and the potential timeline that we've identified a lot of the challenges. And again, we all know that there's going to be things that come up that we haven't maybe planned for, but hopefully it'll be something related to something we have been planning for. It's not something that just kind of comes over the bow unexpected.
Truly, you guys are incredibly prepared. From what I saw of your change management plan, I mean, the stakeholder involvement, to me, that seems to be one of the biggest downfalls is people think they have to do this alone in a room, and that can actually be detrimental. And getting that stakeholder involvement, because they are the functional experts, and then identifying challenges and then coming up with a plan. So I think that's absolutely huge. So Tim, I mean, your management change, you are obviously a very skilled safety manager. I even learned a lot from you as well. I learned a lot from you looking at your management of change. One question I get asked a lot, if I'm not a pilot or if I haven't been a pilot, can I still be a safety manager? And I'm looking at you, your background's in maintenance, you're a director of maintenance and a wonderfully effective safety manager. Have you seen any bias with that or any challenges that the fact that you didn't come from necessarily a piloting background?
I think that's a question that I would dare say many safety managers and perhaps even flight operations directors that maybe weren't kind of the traditional route of being a pilot either prior to or in addition to. For myself, I feel fortunate that my leadership was confident in what they had seen out of me in a decade of managing their maintenance department to think I might be a good fit for this role. As I had mentioned earlier, I kind of focused some of my training long before this opportunity presented itself kind of towards the safety realm because I kind of felt that was part of the growth of me personally and professionally. And I think maybe a lot of folks that get into a role where maybe it's a bit atypical, I think you enlist the folks that can help shore up some of the gaps you might have in your professional background. I mentioned our previous safety officer was a pilot, and that may be somewhat traditional, but that safety officer, I thought wisely enlisted the expertise and the knowledge of his maintenance, not just the leaders, but the technicians on the floor, to help fill in some of that gap that he might not have had. And I think I've done a lot of the same. I know good and darn well what I know and what I don't know. I think I had a lot of benefit in my military career. And I know that doesn't go for every person with a maintenance background, but I served as a flight engineer for a long time. I know I'm dating myself a bit. Got a lot of experience in seeing things go right and maybe not so right, and a lot of crew resource management when that was kind of an infancy term. And we were just kind of getting around to some of that stuff. So I know that's been a benefit where I can somewhat place myself to a degree in some of those folks' kind of realms, if you will. But I think the key is to recognize maybe your shortfalls, your gaps, your areas of maybe you don't have the most knowledge and expertise, and go to the folks that do and enlist their thoughts, their thinking, their inputs. Our safety committee has a lot of pilots on it. We've got we've got representation from throughout the department, but I very keenly take their inputs and try and incorporate them into our program and our directives and our guidance on certain things. It's good to have some voice from all over the department because you never know where your next issue is coming from. And again, I think I spoke earlier to the fact that I recognized that fact coming aboard into this role and thought a good thought would be to initiate a change management on myself. And it's a key role in the department, whether it's another pilot coming into the role or somebody with a maintenance background such as myself, and kind of let folks throw rocks at it and see, hey, where are some things that, Tim per se might have some strengths and maybe where are some weaknesses that, we might need to help shoulder up on for a while until he kind of gets his legs under him. Just learning the program for starters is a challenge for anybody coming from kind of an operational role. The fact that I didn't and don't have kind of current operational piloting experience in this department, I think is something that was recognized and thought that can be overcome with kind of surrounding yourself with the right folks. And that'll continue for as long as I'm in this role. And I think anybody, regardless of their background, would be wise to take that approach.
So I think we agree that you don't have to be a pilot to be an effective safety manager, or maybe even any certain role, maintenance or even dispatch. What do you think it takes to be an effective safety manager from your experience?
I think the willingness to entertain people's thoughts and inputs that might counter from your own. I've got a lot of preconceived thoughts about how certain things ought to go and maybe based on previous outcomes. The willingness and the ability to take inputs and to not be taken aback when they don't necessarily run in line with your own, and willing to kind of look at it and sit back and take flight coordination's inputs on it, or the pilots, or even we've got pilots on different parts of the country that fly different equipment that have a totally different perspective on things, and to try and have some empathy and keep collaboration in mind. That has thus far that's served me well. I've learned a lot about our department that I wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to just being in maintenance or just being one of the pilots or a flight coordinator. So I feel fortunate in that regard. Again, I think the willingness to take inputs from all over the department and not get bruised up if maybe they're not in line with your thinking all the time, and to know that there's more than one way. A lot of times there's more than two ways to get something done safely. That's been kind of a big attribute of this department, is their willingness to contribute, to provide inputs, and to do so without a lot of headlocks and coercion and all that. We've got I feel like a really robust reporting program, and that's helped me get assimilated into this position probably as well as I could have hoped to up to this point.
That's very encouraging, very wise words. And I say encouraging too, because there are individuals I talk to that they may want to do the role, but because they're not a pilot, that they can't do it. Even some of the interns that we have here at Baldwin, they're worried that they can't do it because they don't have flight experience. And you're proving them that you can be an extremely effective safety manager with those characteristics and those traits that you mentioned without necessarily having operational background. Tim, is there anything else you wanted to let the folks that are listening know? Any sage words of wisdom before we sign off?
Sage advice I've got. I feel fortunate to be part of this team and to have folks like Baldwin kind of riding side saddle with us and keeping me straight and ensuring I get off in this role to a good start. And that, again, internally within the department, there's been a lot of folks that have kind of given me some guardrails to work with and some points and some relaying of previous instances that I might not have been privy to in my previous position. That's been very helpful. And then again, the training that Baldwin's provided and some other providers and familiarity of the SMS with Baldwin. And I'll say, as much as anything, your all's responsiveness to when I've had a question, can we change this form? Can we put a block here? How do you do this? That's been first rate. I don't know if that's everybody in the industry or that's just Baldwin, because I don't have any other experience with other SMS management entities. I must say I've been extremely impressed with the responsiveness of you and your team. It's made this easier. It's been good to know that I'm going to hear back from you all very quickly on an issue. It's not days or anything like that. It's usually an hour, if not less, later. So that's been helpful. I don't know that I've got any other kind of advice or wisdom. Again, I've got a fantastic group of folks I get to work with every day, and the ones on our safety committees in particular have been very helpful in helping me in this role and get established and kind of learn the ropes a little bit. So that's been real valuable.
Awesome. Well, we certainly appreciate that. We love having you as a resource, and I really appreciate your time, Tim. This has been wonderful, very insightful. Thank you. Good luck with the change.
Thank you. It was good to be here. I enjoyed talking about change management and SMS. And thank you all again for the chance to speak to this a little bit and for the wonderful support we get.
Well, there you have it. Wasn't that kind of a fun conversation? Always love talking to Tim. Always learn a lot from him. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a thing or two as well, because I know I did. And remember, and anywhere that you listen to this podcast, if you like it, if you could please give us that good rating, that 5-star rating, only if we deserve it. And we look forward to seeing you, in quotes, for the next podcast. Thank you all for what you do out there. Stay safe.
This podcast is brought to you by Baldwin Safety and Compliance, the leader in safety management for the transportation industry. Since 2004, Baldwin has been providing state-of-the-art solutions and 24/7 support to the aviation and transportation industries. Baldwin's clients include all sizes and types of transportation operators. Baldwin provides safety and related business services to commercial and non-commercial transportation operators, medical transporters, FBOs, MROs, airports, flight schools, UAS operators, firefighters, OEMs, ground transport operators, and others. Visit baldwinsms.com to discover how Baldwin can enhance your organization's safety program.